Welcome to Your Thoughts, Your Reality with Michael Cole, the podcast that shines a compassionate light on the journey of veterans battling through life's challenges. Michael is a dual elite certified neuroencoding specialist in coaching and keynote training presentations, dedicated to guiding military veterans as they navigate the intricate pathways of post-deployment life. Join him as we delve into the profound realm of neuroencoding science, empowering these brave individuals to conquer universal battles, procrastination, self-doubt, fear, and more. Together, let's uncover the strength within you to re-engage with families and society, forging a new path forward.
Hello, everybody. So today we have a special guest, super excited about this. Andy Weins is a veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom, with over 20 years of service in the Army Reserves. He's a successful entrepreneur and advocate for veterans, and we're gonna dive into that. Super excited. He is the founder of Green Up Solutions and Camo Crew Junk Removal, where he leverages his military experience to lead and innovate. And he is the co-host of Trash Talk Business Podcast. So we're gonna get into all this stuff. Andy, why don't you just tell us just a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, no, that's you hit the nail on the head. Fourth generation entrepreneur, Army veteran, out here doing the thing. And along the way, I decided to start some podcasts and write a book and share what I've learned over the last 40 years so I can make life simpler for others, right? Life is complicated, and my goal is to write a series of books to make life simpler. And I'm doing that. And the whole goal and what I love about this podcast and this opportunity we have today is your thoughts, your reality, all the things I've studied, the people that I look up to and look forward to learning from, the Les Browns of the world, Stephen Covey, right? It's all about your thoughts and how they govern your reality. And the book I wrote is all about the words. And my goal, my why in this world is to change the world one word at a time. So let's talk about that.
Amen. I absolutely love it. So just before we get started, I want to remind everybody the top right corner, you have a blue QR code that get up a little bit over. There you go. Perfect. I always point the wrong way, and I know.
I go top right, but I was like, we're inverse, and I'm used to being the host, so we're
yeah. Absolutely. Anyway, scan that. It takes you to empowerperformancestrategies.com for people that are listening on podcast forums later. Again, empowerperformancestrategies.com. All kinds of resources, some Facebook groups for veterans and their families, as well as some books and things I've written. So please check that out. All right, Andy, you ready?
Let's do it.
Let's roll. So let's start off with your military experience, if we can. So how has that shaped your approach and your for entrepreneurship and community leadership in that, for that matter?
Yeah. So my background, I did a year in Iraq, a year down in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and the defining moment in my life, as I look back in retrospect, I was voluntold to go to master resiliency training 10 years ago, 2014, en route to Gitmo in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. I served a year down there. And as I went through mass resiliency training, I had this idea the first 10 years of my military service and my life, right? I'm 30 at this point, that I got to go hard. It's all about hard. It's all about being tough. It's all about being strong. It's all about, who can unsheath the sword the fastest, right? And I learned from that school, like within the first hour, it's an 80-hour course, within the first hour, right, that going hard isn't always the best approach. I also learned that the world around me is also a direct result of how I see it. And these are all mind-blowing concepts, because up until that point, I just wanted to blame all my problems on other people because that was super convenient.
Right.
And so that was it, right? It's 20 years, and I did all the things, right? The deployments and the reserve time and the training and the rank and all this stuff. And yet that is the one moment, that first hour of resiliency training, when I realized, and now this is my battle cry this year, it is to be strong enough to be soft. And that was the seed that was planted then, right? We'd read the poem Invictus, talking about, to be, my head, bloody and unbowed and all this other stuff and this badass stuff. And then realize it's like, well, you don't have to be Billy Badass, right? You have to be conscious of the world around you and your thoughts. And when you're conscious of that, then you can start listening to the environment. And once you start listening to the environment, life becomes a lot simpler.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really a great point, because people don't realize until they're actually trying to be vulnerable how courageous you have to be to do it.
Yeah, that was the opening line. What was the opening line of mass resiliency training is asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness.
Amen.
Right, like, how simple is that, right? And since that time, I've become I was a father of a 4-month-old at the time, but it's like that sentence has changed the way that I parent. So it changed the way I am in relationships with others. It's changed the way I am as a business owner. It's changed the way I am as a soldier. I got back from Gitmo, and in Gitmo, I earned a letter of reprimand along with some other stuff, because I challenged, conventional wisdom. And I came back as a career counselor, and I had an opportunity to get out of the Army, and I was a little jaded and frustrated. I said, how do I take this piss poor leadership that I saw in the military, and how do I become the leader that I always wanted? And then leading with accepting people for where they're at and becoming a career counselor, it gave me access to soldiers when they were vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because up until that point, it's, we're training the military not to be vulnerable. And all of a sudden, when I take my top off and the ranks off and we're two people having a conversation and people open up to me, I was a career counselor, and I turned into being a financial counselor and a marriage counselor and a career counselor, a civilian career counselor, and an educational counselor. And I got to see soldiers being vulnerable for the first time, sometimes in their career. And then I got to see the good stuff. And then from that, I've been able to understand what are soldiers really going through and how do we meet them at a human level? I can train to shoot and run, right? APFT, BRM, we got that, right? How do we train them to be great humans? And when they're great humans, then they're going to be great soldiers and great leaders.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. Not only if we can get in there early enough, but during the transition period. I mean, how much would that have changed? I mean, obviously, you already figured some things out before transition. So, how much would have that changed if you really focused on that during the transition period?
Well, I appreciate you giving me credit where there is no credit due. I'll talk about my two transformations. It's not a transition, right? The idea of I hate the word transition, so I'm gonna X that for my own, right? It's transformation,
Okay.
and what it comes down to is we go from troops in boots to veterans in the civilian world,
Right.
and it's a transformation. You have to transform your mindset. So I'll give it 2 times, right? When I got back from Iraq, I spent the first 6 weeks in the bar, and then I went back to work for 6 weeks. And then I got rid of all my stuff and was homeless for a year and touring the country with a band, right? And then I'm like, oh, I should settle down and do all the things. So then I spent 6 months. I bought a house. I got a girlfriend. I got a dog, and I got a job, right? And then I got laid off from my job, and now all of a sudden I've been home for 18 months and I haven't actually done anything different. I'm still in this mindset. Even then, I'm like, oh, let's go back to Iraq. That was my plan. Let's go back to Iraq, right? Because Iraq felt like home. None of those places, the bar, the job, the homelessness, the girlfriend, none of them felt like home. And then I found myself back in the bar, and it wasn't until I was told I had a drinking problem by the VA, which I thought was comical, right? I had a boredom problem. And really, as I look back, I had an identity problem. I wanted to be a soldier, and the world didn't need Andy to be a soldier. The world needed Andy to be a good person. And I wasn't a good person. I wasn't a good person to myself. And because I wasn't a good person to myself, I wasn't a good person to everybody else. So I figured it out, right? I started counseling, and I got a job. I started going to college. I started working on me. As soon as I started investing in me, then my life changed. Now let's fast forward 8 years. I get back from Gitmo, and I got my letter of reprimand. I transitioned units as soon as I got back home. I started going through a divorce. I started dating a woman, right? And I was like, oh, I'll just expedite this. I've done it before. Let's just take this 18-month process and let's rip it down to 90 days, right? Like when you come home, you're like, don't make any major decisions in 90 days. I'm like, well, let me think about this. I started a new job. I got a new house. I started a divorce, and I started dating somebody, like all within 90 days. Like, oh, I'm smart enough. I already know the end state. Let me just expedite this. Like, we don't need time for growth and healing. And it still took 18 months, because then 18 months later, I'm like, wow, I'm a mess, because I never took the time to transform. I thought, again, I could just, and I had all the information.
Right.
I went through master resiliency training. I was a platoon sergeant. I led soldiers. I had this ego about myself that I had it all figured out. I'll just make it go faster this time around. And speed was not my friend. So in both times, it's the opportunity to understand where I'm at. There's this joke I hear a lot of time with coaching, and people will say, well, awareness is the first step. And I hate that advice. Terrible advice. Reflection is the first step. Look back, reflect on how did you show up in certain situations? And the way you showed up, did it serve you and your long-term goals or not? Because it's subjective to say, well, it's good or bad, right? Positive, negative. It is clearly objective to say, hold on, did the way I showed up in this moment serve my long-term goals, yes or no? So the first question you got to ask yourself is, well, what's my long-term goal? Right? What is my North Star? Right?
Yeah,
Mark Twain talks about it, right? The two most important days of your life are the day you're born and the day you figure out why. And that why may change, right? I said from the top, right? My why right now is to change the world one word at a time, right? My battle cry is strong enough to be soft. Okay. In 6 months, that may change. It's better to have a goal that may change over time than wander around the world aimlessly.
Well, not only that, Andy, but as you grow and you mature and your perspectives change as well. So it should change, right? I mean, that's my opinion anyway.
You evolve as a human. You evolve, right? It's constant course correction. The key is have that thing that you're going after, right? So what happened? What now? Why I live a fulfilling life now is I am consistently reflecting and say, hey, is what I'm doing serving? Yes or no? And then through that work, right, we get with the stuff below the an iceberg ideology. We get what's below the surface, right? And now we are aware of our self-conscious or subconscious. We are aware of how we are responding naturally, right? And instinctively. And then we can do the third step, right? And this is the most critical step, is the self-regulation. It's like we've thought, we know, and now how do we actually show up in the world? Because awareness is great, right? And like they say, awareness is the first step. No, it is how do you actually regulate in real time?
Right.
And what makes you best? Like right before the show, you said, hey, did you look at the questions? No, I did not. Next question, right? Because I know for me, I have a tendency to overthink. And so what I would, right? So before I was aware of how I operate, I would read all the questions. I would come up with great answers. And then I would sit here in an attempt to regurgitate them. Thank you. Them in real time. And that doesn't serve my purpose. Right? That doesn't serve my purpose of being authentic, because now I'm not being authentic. I'm being well-rehearsed and well-prepared. I might as well be a politician at this point.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's funny how we're very similar in that sense, because I will sit there and so here's the secret. I don't really look at the questions either. I do them, I put them away, and then we flow, right? I mean, because organic conversation is always the best conversation in my perspective anyway. So really, really love what you said about that. Right? Truly. So when you started your companies, if you will, but talk to me a little bit more about Green Up Solutions and Camo Crew Junk Removal. What are those specifically?
Yeah, so Green Up Solutions, my brother and I wrote it on a napkin the day before I shipped out to Gitmo. And I told myself I had worked, I had done all the things, right? From 18 to 30, it's like I worked for small businesses. I worked for big companies and corporations. I deployed, right, joined the Army. I became a manager at a Fortune 500 company, at Waste Management. So I done all these things. And all the while, I was running away from my true passion. I'm a fourth-generation entrepreneur. I have two younger brothers. Between the three of us, we have 0 jobs. We are unemployable individuals. My dad worked for about 10 years post-college for other people. My grandfather worked for about 10 years post-high school. Like, we all worked for about 10 years. And then after about 10 years, we're like, yeah, this isn't for us, right? It takes a lot of work to not have a job. And so right before I left for Gitmo, I said, okay, I'm done with this. I'm going to do this deployment. And when I come home, I'm going to build the life I want. I'm going to put work into my own dreams. So we started Green Up Solutions. And the idea there was, I'm going to come home and I'm going to be an environmental consultant. I'm going to have a bachelor's degree with a focus on environmental studies, or business management with a focus on environmental studies. And I'm going to go tell big corporations how they can reduce their environmental impact. And that was in 2016. And so far in 8 years, I made a total of $0 for my perspective or opinion on environmental impact, right? Because the goal is you got to create solutions. They don't want to see the piece of paper that says, this is what you should do, right? The shit word. No, what is it you need to do, and what can I do to implement that? And so the first thing we did after starting Green Up Solutions is we got into the franchise world doing junk removal. So I had done junk removal for years. I had it as a side hustle. I cleaned out houses and buildings and moved people and did all this stuff. So we started doing junk removal. We did the franchise world for about 4 years. I got jaded. It was a veteran brand, and they took all the worst parts of being a veteran and they plastered it. It's like, oh, veterans struggle and veterans need this, and without us, veterans will kill themselves. And it's like, no, how about veterans have all these amazing talents and abilities? Let's focus on that.
Amen.
So I got to the franchise world. COVID hit. I had a 2-year non-compete. I got involved in some other businesses. I had a Rage Room entertainment company. I had a networking and speaking company. I had a videography company. Right now, I'm obsessed with entrepreneurship. And you give me 2 years of time, I'm going to chase squirrels. Non-compete gets up. I rebuy the assets to my former company, relaunched Camel Crew 2.5 years ago. And now we are one of the top regional junk removal companies here in the Midwest. And I've also transformed that also into the podcast, the Trash Talk Business Podcast, where I take the lessons learned every day here with Camel Crew and I share them free for all the junk removal companies in here in North America and across the world on how to be more environmentally sustainable while running your junk removal company. So 8 years later, I'm doing exactly what I want to do, which is impact the environment through entrepreneurship.
Love it, man. We're very similar in that sense. About the same age group. I was like done working for other people and went off and did the same thing. So, amen, man. So you said you've written some books, or a book. Sorry, which was it?
So I wrote a book, and I'm writing 2 more. So the book I wrote is called Words Fucking Matter: Retrain Your Brain to Use Language That Serves You. And this book, I always have a copy. I have a copy right next to my desk here that has coffee stains all over it because it also ends up being the spot where I put my coffee cup. Because I have a coffee here. You know what? I'm hydrated, right? I have a coffee cup and a water, right? So you know what? I mean, right? The processes. Anyhow, words fucking matter. I took what I learned in mass resiliency training and I started writing a book. So it started with a book called Hustle, Struggle, Grind: The 13 Lessons of Life. And I got a co-writer or ghostwriter rather, and we started writing this book. And after 90 days, we're sitting there on a Zoom call, and she goes, "We got nothing, right? I just spent 90 days doing an outline," and she goes, "We got nothing here. Nothing binds all these things together."
Right.
And she goes, we were talking about thought leadership. Well, what does it matter, right? Okay, so I have all these life lessons. So what? And she goes, "What's interesting about you is you're very particular about your words and your language." And I said, "Yeah, because words fucking matter." And it was like, there you go. Right. So she's the one that saw something in me. And then we wrote this book about the importance of language. And so like even your podcast, like I think of Stephen Covey, right? Stephen Covey writes, right, your thoughts essentially become your destiny, right? Mm-hmm. Its thoughts become actions, actions become behaviors, and it goes on. And same with you, your thoughts become reality. So these are both true. And my argument is simple. They're incomplete because your thoughts are governing words. They talk about when you master a language, you start to think in that language, you start to dream in that language. Mm-hmm. And so I'm only a native English speaker. That's the only language I know. And so I think in English words. On average, we have 70,000 words we process a day in our thoughts, and 7,000 spoken words. And my argument is simple. When you change one word, you change your reality.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because it's about the perspective you have, being aware. Now, here's my perspective, not perception. Well, this is what I think is going on in the world. Well, hold on. Let's be aware of who we are. In my fighting position, this is what I see. Let me articulate that with my words and be willing to change one word. So I use the word when and not if. Right? Mm-hmm. When has a time component. If is arbitrary. Yeah. So when I change certain words, it changes the narrative. When we get rid of the words like sorry and say thank you. So instead of expressing remorse, we express gratitude. Yeah. Right? Hey, sorry for being late. Serves no one. Thank you for your patience shows that I respect you enough to, right? I accept the fact I was late. I'm acknowledging it, right? And I'm leading with gratitude. Hey, thanks for your patience today. And so when you change it and shape that one world, you're going to build out this world, that one word. You change the way you see the world around you. The world has not changed. I grew up with a plaque in our house, and it still hangs in my house to this day. And I did not understand it the first 25 years I had it. And it essentially says that the world is 1% what happens around you and 99% of your attitude to what happens around you. And it's no different. Master resiliency training teaches us there's an activated event, there's your thoughts, and then your consequences, right? Because your emotions, your actions. And it's like, okay, it was very eye-opening to me when I realized I have no control over my actions. That's all the studies say that you have no control over your actions, and you have all the control in the world over your thoughts. So on this 3-part equation, I'm not going to control what's happening around me, right? Things that happen near me. I'm not going to control how I react or respond to those situations. However, I can control my thought. So the argument I make in my book, and it's backed up by research by Dr. Bill Crawford, is that when we take control of our thoughts, we start to respond to situations versus reacting to a stimulus.
Absolutely.
Right. When people, I do keynotes and workshops, and people look at me and they're like, I don't know about that. And I just say, okay, think about the last fight you had with your significant other. Your heat of the moment thought that more than likely came out of your mouth, right? Were you responding to the situation, or were you reacting to the person? And they're like, oh yeah, that son of a bitch, I can't believe I married him, or whatever, right? And it's like, and it's comical, and it's like, why? Well, yeah, because you're reacting to the person, not responding to the situation. And it's like anything else in life. You got to get the reps in. When you learn to respond, when you lead with gratitude, when you change your thoughts, it becomes habitual. You start looking for the gratitude. You start looking for the opportunity. How do we respond to a situation versus reacting to a person? And it takes rep after rep after rep after rep. I have a live show every Monday. It's called Andy Weins Live. I go on, I talk about it. I wrote a book on it, right? And I feel like a preacher standing on the altar of righteousness, knowing that I'm a sinner, knowing that I fail at this every day, knowing that I make choices that are inconsistent with my North Star out of convenience, out of excuse, out of spite, out of right. To be human is to err is to be human, right? I fail every day, right? And in reflection, I say, okay, there's some opportunity. All right, Andy, right? In the present, let's focus on the past and how do we impact the future? Recognize the past and move on.
Absolutely. That's how you learn. That's how you grow. If you don't recognize it, if you don't see it, you're never going to move forward. You're going to sit there and blame somebody else. And I like to add the neuroencoding portion of this just for a second. Every time you realize it, every time you catch it and you change your thoughts, celebrate it, pat yourself on the back, shake your ass, do what you got to do. Just smile, release those endorphins, get all those good hormones going through your body, because then your brain automatically looks for it again.
Yeah,
so it's really important.
I have action coach. I love to give credit where credit is due, because I take they say when you copy from one person, it's plagiarism. When you copy from everybody, it's from old research. And so I like to cite my sources. Okay, so action coach, they have, right, that's it, right, we're going to talk about all the things it's like, I want to take all the best parts of all these things I've learned, and action coach, they have the OAR, ownership, accountability, responsibility, is above the line living, right? And then there's the BED, BED, blame, excuse, denial. That's below the line. I made this argument a couple months ago, and I've really tested it now when I watch people and listen to their language, is people have a predisposition to one of the three, right? And they rank them. No different than fight, flight, or freeze. People have a predisposition. So I know my predisposition. Okay, so I'm a flyer naturally. I think about me as a kid. When my dad would yell, I'd run away. When I would get in trouble at school, I would avoid it, right? I wouldn't just stand there. I would just be like, I'm not here, right? And also blame, excuse, denial. I'm a blamer. I 100%, right? I'm not going to give you excuses. That's lazy. I'm not going to be denied the reality. No, I'm going to find the information wherein I'm not responsible. So I've had a personal situation recently where I did not ask the question that would have given me the information pertinent to the situation. And I avoided the question because I didn't want to know the answer. And then I made decisions, right? And so now I can look back and said, look at this information you withheld from me. But no, I never asked the question. I never asked the question that was pertinent. And I've done that here. I've done that personally and professionally, right? I've hired people with the assumption, oh, they want to do this or they want to do that. I never asked them.
Yeah.
And so now I'm learning more and more to ask the questions necessary to capture the data that's most relevant, right? Data-driven decisions starts with data. And for me, I've been, I've used my intelligence to assume, right? Versus using my ignorance to ask. It's, lead with that ignorance, lead with that vulnerability. Hey, I genuinely don't know the answer to this question.
Yeah.
We had a salesman right before this, and there was an event. It was at Miller Park. So it's a Brewers game event. And I asked my sales guy, I said, hey, do you want to go to that? And he kind of hemmed and hawed. I'm like, it's a yes or no. He's like, I would prefer not. Okay. Within a minute, one of our other guys was walking by who also does the events. I go, Casey, you've been to I said, you want to go to a Brewers game? He's like, I love going to Brewers games. All right, good. Right. So instead of, it's that simple. It's a yes or no. I didn't make him do it. Right. And now I freed up inventory so our business development guy can do something else. Why? Because I didn't assume I knew. I didn't just go, hey, let's ask a few questions, right? Listen to the world around you and then respond accordingly. I am very aware, right, of that. I'm bullish. I think I'm the smartest person in the room. I want to have all the answers. I selflessly or selfishly, whichever you want to look at it, want to be the solver of all the problems, right? I have a savior's complex. So because of that, I go, okay, hold on, Andy. You don't have to have all the answers. I hire smart people to have them tell me what to do, right? Steve Jobs mentality. They'll tell me the right answers. It's my job as a leader in business and in life to ask really good questions. Mm-hmm. I got a 10-year-old daughter, and that's the thing that I'm focusing on the most with her. I want her to learn to ask really good questions.
Yeah.
Because then when you do that, the answers come to you. And then you get to decide based on that answer, what's your next question or what's your next course of action? Because you have the information.
Yeah, absolutely love that. You know, there's even with ourselves asking those questions, like you said before, that we don't want to know the answers to. If you go in there and you're curious, not critical with yourself and or other people, you get good answers. Slow down, be present, and ask the right questions.
I love the curiosity. So curiosity is a beautiful thing. So in the military, I took the strengths finder test, right? We all have 24 strengths, no weaknesses. Weakness is a shit word, right? We have strengths and we have things that aren't strengths. And on that test, I scored, my number 1 is zest for life. And number 24 is humility. So now that I'm aware of this, right? And again, you laugh, you've known me for all of 20 minutes now, and you're like, oh, that story checks out, right? And so that let me lead with this curiosity and also be humble. I love what you use the word curious, right, versus critical. When people use the word constructive criticism, it's like, well, that's an oxymoron. How do we let's find a neutral word, right? And now let's use the word feedback. Feedback's a very neutral word. In order to be great at seeking feedback, you also have to be great at receiving feedback.
Absolutely.
And as a leader, that's been a difficult thing for me, or complicated. I'll say complicated. It's been complicated for me because people look to me to have the answers. Like, hold on, no, I need everybody at this table to show me all my blind spots.
Absolutely.
Right? The world is 360 degrees, and I see 180 degrees. This is what I see. You're at the table. We're at a round table. What's behind me? What am I not seeing? And that's what it's about, asking those good questions, being vulnerable, right? And the thought is, okay, I don't know shit. Let's start with, I don't know what I don't know. And I accept the fact that I don't know shit. All right.
And that's where most people get in trouble, right? Is they won't do that.
No.
There's no stuff in there. You know, I've done it at times. But how many, you have those amazing people around you to fill those gaps and to help you. So why not listen to everybody and then make decisions?
Yeah, and for me, I know I'm in the wrong when I say something to the effect of, I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know this. As soon as I say I don't know, I am pre-blaming or pre-providing an excuse for my inability to ask the question.
Right.
So when I find myself, I don't know what they were thinking. Well, hold on. Okay, fine. Truth. That's the fact. Right? Let's start with the thought. I don't know what they were thinking. What's a good question to ask? How are you thinking? What are you thinking about? How are you feeling?
Yep.
Right? In personal relationships, right? How are you feeling is a great question. Often where people are like, hey, are you good? Are you bad? Are you upset? Are you happy? No. How are you feeling? And then do this magical thing. And it's magical because it takes a lot of skill for me. This magical thing, ask the question, and then shut the fuck up.
Tip of the day right there.
Right? Create the time and space for the person to answer.
Be present. Take a breath. Yep.
And it's magical because I have a radio background. I hate dead air. Silence scares me. And yet again, we're being vulnerable here today. And I love vulnerability. I love sharing myself. The more I own it, I'm a victor, right? I am a victor of the fact that silence scares me. So you know what I do? I fucking lean into it. I ask the question, and then I sit there. And I make a point when I ask a question and allow the time, I calm my breathing. I don't move. I don't drink my coffee. I sit there because I want that person to have that the utmost acceptance of who they are. And I genuinely want to hear what they have to say. And almost always, this is what happens. You say, how are you feeling? That's a good question. How are you feeling? Because we all feel things at times, right? So how are you feeling about X, Y, Z? It's a great question. They'll answer. Pause. 15, 30 seconds. Allow the uncomfortable silence to exist. You're allowing that person time to process. And at some point, when you see their emotions on their face start to come down, right? Because they're going from an emotional conversation to logically thinking about their emotions, which is different. The next best statement, tell me more.
Mm-hmm. Love that.
You're now giving them permission to share what was in their head during the silence. Yeah. You're allowing them to be themselves. You're not asking anything else of them. You're not demanding. You're saying, here is the runway. Yeah. Tell me more. Take as much runway as possible so we can start to take off and go some direction. And what I found with most people, they will embrace it. Yeah. You see this initial emotional conversation turn into a logical conversation. And then often people won't ask for a timeout. I'm a huge believer in taking a timeout, right? And I take them all the time. I'm a natural flyer. So when I'm in a conversation where it's no longer being productive, I'll say, hey, I need to remove myself from this conversation, right? The eye language is a beautiful thing. I think that's one. I think I'm going to talk about eye language today on my show. The power of I, right? It's the most important and the most powerful way to start a sentence, right? Hey, I am no longer productive in this conversation, so I am going to remove myself, and I will let you know when I'm ready to reconnect, right? Yeah. And now we're going to take the time, right? Sometimes it's 30 seconds, sometimes it's 30 minutes, right? Maybe it's a day, right? And then reconvene so we can now have a logical conversation on an emotional situation.
Yeah, I love that.
Which is significantly different than having an emotional conversation. Yeah, about an emotional situation. Like,
yeah, you got to step away.
Right.
But I love the way you put it, though.
Yeah,
absolutely love that.
I guess funny thing is, I'm coming up with this on the fly, like this 3-step methodology, because that's what I do, right? So it's ask how you're feeling, transitional, shut the fuck up, tell me more, and then allow the space when needed to reconvene, as needed.
Yeah. Absolutely love it.
Because what happens is we're planting the seeds, which allows both people to subconsciously process this information. It's one of the reasons why sleeping on it is great, because your brain is subconsciously processing all the thoughts from the day. And the next day you wake up, you're like, wow, why did I respond that way? Oh, I responded that way because this happened before and I came in and right? Yep. Simple. Have you ever heard of the HALT methodology?
I've not.
Okay, so HALT. HALT is the simplest way to understand where you're at in your day. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. I've spent a lot of time working on suicide prevention and crisis within veterans. Yeah. And I learned this. I've probably seen, 50 suicide briefs in my 20 years in the military. And I forgot 49 of them, right? 48 because the other 49 were all the same thing. So I remember the one that was the same thing every time. And there was one I saw 5 or 6 years ago. And it was a civilian that came in and they talked about a HALT. And I've seen this in real life and real practice. I've escorted some veterans to behavioral health and I see exactly what they do. So HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. When you're in a crisis mode.
Making notes.
Yes. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired.
Thank you.
When you're in crisis mode, and I've seen, again, I can think of a gentleman, we got back from Gitmo, and I got a phone call from his wife not even a month later, and he was in a rough spot. He had 2 babies at the time. They were struggling. He was struggling. And She called me. I called the cops. I got there. And what I saw was we escorted him to behavioral health. This is what they do. You get there, behavioral health. They ask you if you're hungry. You say yes or no. They feed you. Then they put you to bed. That's it. Next morning, you wake up. They feed you. They tell you to rest. They feed you at lunch. They tell you to rest. They feed you again at dinner. Tell you to rest. Third day, they feed you. And now is the first time they ask what's going on. Because more than likely, when you are in crisis mode, you are one of those 4 things, and often more than one. You're hungry, you're angry, you're lonely, you're tired. So angry and lonely, right, are internal conflicts.
Right.
They're subjective to a certain extent, right? Tired and hungry are clearly objective and controllable. So when you go into behavioral health, those first 24 to 36 hours, all they do is feed you and allow you the time and space to rest. And then on day 3 or 4, day 2 or 3, however, whatever time you come in, right around that 36-hour mark, then they start having conversations. And those conversations are significantly different than the conversations they would have had in hour 0.
I can only imagine. Yeah.
Right. So we can think about the Snickers commercial about, Betty White being hangry, right? Like we all know it. We all know what hangry is, right? Yeah. You're the first 2. You're hungry and you're angry, right? And you're probably angry because you're hungry. What are you going to do about it, right? The question always comes down to is, okay, right? We've reflected, we are aware. So now the magical thing to ask yourself is, what am I going to do about it?
Right.
Am I going to take the time to eat? I'm going to take the time to rest. And what does that look like? And then you can still be angry. You can still be lonely. Now, at least you can look at it objectively and say, okay, well, what am I going to do about it? Right? I was angry yesterday. We had a situation where one of our guys didn't go to a networking event on a Sunday. I was fuming. Right? And so once I texted and realized the situation was the situation, I go, sounds good. Yesterday afternoon, I sent an email to our leadership team, making them aware of the situation, right? I controlled what I controlled. I made them aware of it so they're not blindsided. And then today I walked in, I didn't even acknowledge it because there was nothing I could do about it. And the gentleman that didn't go to the networking event after our sales meeting this morning, he goes, hey, Andy, I got to talk to you. Sounds good. I knew what we were going to talk about. And he owned his situation. Me staying angry about it does not serve. I'm not creating an environment for feedback. I'm not creating an environment for grace.
No,
right?
Right.
I'm not being strong enough to be soft. I was strong enough to be soft yesterday. I triaged the situation, and I went to the networking event. I made the leadership team aware of it, right? We charted the notes, if you will, right? And then I had the wherewithal and patience to wait for him to come to me. I essentially called a timeout, right? Yep. And allowed him then to come to me. And we had a very healthy conversation and a future-focused conversation, which is very different than a past-focused conversation.
Fantastic.
I learned that recently. One of the things I learned recently is it's better to argue about the future than the past. People want to argue the facts about the fact versus the past and the facts in the past versus let's have an argument of where we're going in the future. Because this we can control. We can't argue. Arguing about what happened does not serve me.
That is very true. That is very true. Hey, Andy, we blew past time. I didn't even pay attention. We're like 9 minutes over already.
I thought it was a 45-minute show. So I'm like, oh, we're good on time. We got to land the plane yet.
So if you can, let's give us 3 tips to get veterans further faster, if you will, sir.
3-step methodology. Self-reflection, take the time and space, meditation, go for a walk, think, drive in silence, yoga, take the time to let your brain process all the things you've gone through in life, right? Allow that time and space for quiet. Second thing, become hyper aware of your perspective on the world so that your perception of reality does not get in the way. And finally, regulate. Learn to regulate in real time. Breathe before walking into a situation. Anticipate favorable outcomes and be excited when otherwise you feel nervous to reduce your anxiety.
Yeah.
And when you do those 3 steps consistently, they become habitual. and you will reap the destiny, and you'll become the person you were always meant to be by that 3-step methodology.
Absolutely love it, man. Absolutely love it. And I just want to add on, every time you do one of those things, celebrate it. Celebrate it. Makes your brain look for it more. So amen. Absolutely love this time, man. Love to have you back on again sometime if you're up for that.
Absolutely.
Amen. So Andy, as always, time's most valuable resource we have as human beings. Thank you for spending this time with us. Really, really appreciate it, man.
Appreciate it.
All right, man. On that note, everybody, we are out of here.
Thank you for joining us on another insightful journey of Your Thoughts, Your Reality podcast with your host, Michael Cole. We hope the conversation sparked some thoughts that resonate with you. To dive deeper into empowering your thoughts and enhancing your reality, visit empowerperformancestrategies.com. Remember, your thoughts shape your reality, so make them count. Until next time, stay inspired and keep creating the reality you desire. Catch you on the next episode.